Hey there, 2D Design. I'm back. We just had one video where we did a more drastic step value scale. Now we just did a more painterly one with a kind of ombre effect. And we are about to do one where we do a ball. So what I want us to do is find something that you can trace that's round. This is the tape that came in your kit, and it might be a little too big, so I found a smaller one. But you could use a cup or a bowl or some kind of tracer. I think you'll be really a lot happier if you have something to shape it out on. And I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to make it so that this ball has a light source and that it's sitting down. So I'm going to draw a little horizon line, make sure it connects so it sits. Okay, so this is kind of more like a drawing lesson in some ways, because we're going to talk about highlight, light, shadow, reflected light, core shadow, which is in the reading section. But we're going to do it with paint. So I'm going to just sketch out a little cast shadow. I'm kind of making it up. I'm going to act like my light source is coming from here. And what I want to do is we're going to do this ball in a more drastic way, like this one. If you want to do a second one, you can, where you try to make it more subtle, but we're going to do it a little more designy. So I'm going to mark out a highlight. A middle. A super dark. And then I'm going to make my shadow have some complexities too. So here's going to be a dark, dark, and then a little bit less dark. So I'm going to number these. I'm going to do 0, maybe like a 20, a 40, a 60, maybe we'll say a 90, a 60, and maybe a 30. And then I'm going to paint the background lighter. So this I'm going to say is maybe like a 5 over here, and then maybe I'll do it like a 10 over here. And this I might do like a 0 to a 20. So this is when it's fun that we can kind of break down this value scale. And the hope is if you can paint a little ball, you could translate that into any kind of other sets of information. So I still have quite a bit of my 30, 50, and my 70 left from when I very first started, but my black and my white is kind of running out. So I'm going to put a little bit more. This is why we're going to go through a lot of white, because once we're done with the achromatic section, we'll use this sparingly for tinting, but we'll use a lot of white when we get into color. Okay, so I am going to start painting my negative space first. So I'm going to take my flat brush again. If you want to start to use some different brushes at this point to try some different sizes, you can. Well, I'll do it just for the cause. I'm going to use the 6 shader so I can maybe get into some of these areas. I'm pretty good at doing it with the fat big brush, but just in case I can show you that too. So I had written 10 to 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 30. I'm going to mix up a little lighter. That's pretty. And I'm going to just really try to carefully trace out my ball. If the paint doesn't move, you might want to dip your brush in a little water. And now I'm going to get a little lighter. So I'm going to grab some white. I used quite a bit. I'm going to let it be a little painterly. I'm going to use my bigger brush. This brush was a little bit damp, but not too wet. And you can see how using that other brush kind of helped me with that cross hatching to kind of make that light source feel like it's coming through. A little more white on the side. It's always good when you're trying to make something look like it has depth to think about what the atmosphere of the value is. So by building this negative space first, you've kind of set the tone for the design. Okay, so now we're going to start the bottom of it before we do the actual ball so that we can quickly just lay in this set of information. So I think I wanted it a little darker here, so somewhere in between my 10 and my 30. Notice here I'm mixing with my brush. Then I'm going to go over to a 0 on this side. I'm going to use that dryish brush again to kind of cut those together. Okay, so now I'm going to move into the ball. I'm going to jump into my darks. Take a little of that paint off. I'm going to come in with my black first, where I have my 90. Might cut it down just a little. Get my shadow. Again, if you want to try and use different brushes, you can. And then I'm going to jump up to, I had written a 60, so that's my 70. Here's my 50. Kind of lighten that up. Now I'll jump to a 30. Forgot a section. Kind of paint that back in. And so we've started to build our shadow. I'm going to jump into my 60s in the ball. So it really becomes like a paint by number. That you kind of can reshape, reshift. I'm going to, before I move forward, I'm going to darken my shadow. I'm going to go straight black. Kind of rework that a little bit. I might lighten right there. And then I'll jump to my 40. So I need to make a 40. If this is my 30, here's my 50. Again, I kind of was just making up those numbers just as a shift, but I'm going to add a little bit more of that dark right here to make it a little bigger. And then I'll jump to my 20. I'm trying to lay it on pretty thick, and I will show you in just a second while it's still a little wet how I can use this wash brush to kind of blend it a little. Oops, I had white on there. It's okay. So while it's still a little tacky, I can kind of finesse that down like we did on the ombre one. And then I'm going to use my white while it's still a little wet. I'm going to use this brush, the big one. So it's that kind of more drastic value shifting, but using that little bit of cross hatching to give it some volume. Add a little more white. This can be frustrating at first, so just be really patient with yourself if you're unsure, and I'm happy to do a Zoom with you to kind of talk you through it if you want. But there you go, just a really simple little ball study. And the key to it is that you have that full value scale worked out first. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video and then we're going to do a cube. So we'll be right back. Oops, sorry.